a historical figure. He had lived before. He engaged in various activities. How do you interpret these activities is what will give us different versions of the same person.
Again, so before Prince, I bring you in the month of July, for example, here at GBC, we embarked on a project where we went to many communities across Ghana to look at what the linguists call the toponymy, the history behind the names given to some towns. Yes. And whichever town we went to, the people celebrated the heroics of their forefathers, how their forefathers won a war and conquered a certain land. We didn't come across any town or village where the people said our forefathers ran away when they were being beaten by this other group of people. And so that left me asking, so if everybody else was defeating other persons, who were those who were defeated? Because everybody says we were the victorious side. And again, I'm sorry, Doc, but that leaves some gap for historians to fill.
Yes, nobody glorifies defeat. Yeah. Nobody glorifies it. In situations where they have to state the obvious, they will assign reasons. And it's not only about Ghanaian society, it's not only about Africa, everywhere. We have what we call the weak interpretation of history. And if you take Great Britain, for instance, everything that is victory, empire building, is what should be harped on, but not what brings us. The work of the historian is that when you went to community A and they told you we had an engagement with community B and we defeated them, you don't have to rest there. You also have to go to community B to find out. And then the work of a historian is not to state that this is right, the correct version or not. But that is why we have what we call schools of thoughts. The facts and interpretation given to you by community A is their school of thought. Then the community B is theirs also. What you could do, however, is to do a reconciliation. If I take my own people, Equapian people, the coming of the Equapian state, 1730s, we have two versions. So as a historian, I state the two. And then my reconciliation is that, luckily for the Equapian historian, the versions are almost the same. So I just say that the two could be possible. And this is why it is possible. So I have left it. And whoever reads my work, I leave it to the person to make his or her own judgment. So it is not the work of a historian to say that this is correct and this is wrong. No. Present the facts and you do your interpretation and leave it to your reader.
When I come back to you, Doc, because we are focusing a lot more on the younger generation, the children, and trying to get their interests in history, especially history relative to the Ghanaian story, I would like you to take us back into history. I mean, tell us how the British came, how we became aware that we needed independence, what led to that independence, why we are in this democracy called the Fourth Republic. And what it means for all of us. What happened between the First Republic and the Fourth Republic, all the coup d'etats and so on and so forth. But Prince, now I'll bring you in at this point because you brought out the issue of museums. Museums, yeah. You are an artist. Yes. And obviously when historians like Doc and Co do their research, they write. Sure. Your writing is in the visual form. Children like to watch pictures and interpret those pictures and so on. Sure. But as an artist, are you proud of the state of museums in Ghana?
Thank you very much for this question. I've been waiting for this question for a very long time. Yeah. Those who follows me for a while now, for the past 4 months, I've been campaigning excessively on bringing back the museum. I'm a young man who, I could say, what I do today, I had my background from the National Museum, the Ghana National Museum. At a very tender age, around 12 years, I visit the museum every time.
Right.
After close of school, I do my paintings in the museum. So after close of school, I'll be in the museum till evening. Then I'll go back home. So I learned a lot. I studied a lot. Everything I do today, or the things that I learned from the, or information that I gathered from the museum. But here is the case that the museum has been closed down for the past 7 years.
7 years?
Yes, for the past 7 years, due to leakages and some, maintenance and all that. And I ask myself, so kids of today, how will they also be able to understand our history? Even if they are being taught in school, even if they read from school, they need to go to the museum to find out how true is it. So if we don't have the museums available, so it means like there's no practicality in anything we learn in school. For me, I feel it's about time that we fix the museum. Now, there's another twist to all this. The museum we have been using for the past, let's say since 1957, now we gained independence. I can tell you that that museum space is just an entrance to the main museum that is at the back of that building. Kwame Nkrumah started the building the museum, and for us to have some exhibitions during the Independence Day, he quickly finished the structure we're using now. And since then, that structure has rather been the National Museum.
Currently, we're showing some of your works
Sure.
in the past.
Sure.
Some of the and you call this what?
This is scenic painting. Backdrops I painted for the National Theatre for a stage performances. So these are some of
and these are all works in your own hands.
Yes, please. Works I've done for the theatre. TV stations, and then these are stuff I did in South Africa and in Joburg, 2017. That's the first UTV morning show. I did a set.
Right.
Yeah. So
you created,
yes,
you designed that set for them. That's
yes,
nice.
Yeah. So
okay.
When it comes to social effects and all that.
Okay. So okay, and we saw a scene from a movie there.
Yes.
And the effects of blood oozing out of somebody's cheek.
Yeah.
All that was done by you.
Yes, please. That's special effect makeup. So I designed this. The lane state of Professor Mills. The state that I designed.
That was in 2012.
Yes.
You designed that?
Yes, I designed that.
Okay, and
these are works I did with Hollywood in Nairobi, Kenya. I was employed as a scenic artist to work with Hollywood in Nairobi, Kenya, in a film called Sense8.
Congratulations.
In that film, I transformed a donkey to look zebra. That's what I'm doing there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starstruck right now. Okay, so that's the donkey. Two donkeys, really.
Yes.
Now
And
looking like zebras.
The car you see in the movie was designed, created by myself. That Van Damme saw the designs and he liked it. So I painted Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yes, the one I painted on the car. So he employed me. Actually, he employed me to work on the show.
Okay. so again, how is this connected to telling any story about Ghana and our past?
Sure.
How is this important? This is just you making money, is it not?
For me, not just the money, because I love to impart. I've been doing this all my life. I've taught young ones, I've been teaching around, moved to schools. I run workshops for senior high school, visual art departments. I do for universities as well, done in other African countries too as well. And I feel it's about time. My campaign most is letting the artist know his true calling. if you are an artist, you don't limit yourself to just drawing and painting. Art is really broad. I entered into the theater. First day I entered into the theater, I realized that, hey, I should be a creator and not just a painter or a sculptor. Because the theater space or the stage is like a clay.
Sure, you have to mold.
You need to mold. So as an artist, costume design, makeup, special effects, prop design, set design, all these areas you should be abreast with. So I believe if an artist becomes a creator, you will never lack.
Okay,
You will never lack.
I'll go back to Doc now, and Doc will give us a recount for many of the children who may be watching at this point in time, but even for the adults who may not know, to give us a recount of the history of the Gold Coast, and then Ghana, and then the Fourth Republic. But when he's done and we come back to you, Prince, you will tell us how many of your paintings reflect the Ghanaian story.
Thank you.
To start with. Doc, so where can we start recounting our journey as a country from?
That's a big question. But let's take, if we look at what we are today, where we are, then I'll start from how we became connected with the outside world, which simply put was a reaction or a response to an external factor, in the sense that Europeans were engaged in the trade in spices in the Far East, and two factors, economic and religion, made it necessary for Europeans to look elsewhere to get to the Far East. The religion had to do with Christianity and Islam. Europeans going to the Far East had to pass through Arabia, and with Islam, the disagreement over their faith was there. And then the economic had to do with those people, the Europeans, passing through our land. In our religious realm, you are infidels, you are unclean. You pass through our land, go to the next stop, buy goods, cross our lands, back to Europe, and you make money. So if that is the case, we also have to take part, make gains from the trade. We are not allowing you to cross our territory. There should be a port somewhere where you come and we go for the goods, sell to you. Obviously, nobody wants to deal with middlemen if you want to maximize profit. So Europeans will think of another route to India, and that coincided with their coming to some coastal ports of West Africa, where Moomen happened to be one. And by coincidence, Moomen was full of trading activities, and especially in gold. So they will participate in the trade and keep up and come. And here we're talking about Europeans, we are talking about the Portuguese. So they'll keep on with those trade, establish contact with the Elmina, and for that matter, Gold Coast. They gave the name to the country, the Gold Coast, the Elmina, the mines. And for 100 years, they'll be the main European factor on the Gold Coast. The Dutch will come in. And how did it happen? The Portuguese and the Dutch did not see eye to eye. They were all, we call it conflict of interest. But by the 100 years that the Portuguese had lived with the people, they've come to realize, the indigenous people have come to realize the high-handedness of the Portuguese. So they will aid the Dutch, trade with them, and eventually aid the Dutch to dislodge the Portuguese. The others will also come. And By 1850, when eventually the focus, I mean the European presence was getting solely to that of the British, from Axim down to Ada and Keta, they had more than 35 European trading posts, forts and castles there, trading with us. We were trading before the Europeans came. Their presence wasn't the first international trade. The northbound trade was there across the Sahara, dealing in gold, dealing with in slaves, kola nuts, and salt. So the European presence would change the direction to the coast. And with it, the people, the indigenous people, various groups, we existed as independent states. We didn't have the Gold Coast as a complete entity, but we operated as independent states. The Fantis, the hunters, this and that were there. And even if we break down the Fantis, you see the Cape Coast people and whatever were there. But this trade will mark a beginning whereby our focus and interest will be dealing with Europeans. Then, of course, the unfortunate slave trade will come in, which is also the result of an external drive. What we wrongly say, the discovery of the Americas. I would say establishment of contact between Europeans and then the New World will bring in a new dimension, production of materials that will be needed in Europe for their industries, and that will spark the slave trade. We should take note that initially the Gold Coast was not exporting slaves. Slaves were not taken from the Gold Coast to the no. Rather, slaves were brought from the slave coast, Benin, Dahomey, around Nigeria, and then brought in here and sold. And these slaves were purchased and sent into the interior to work in gold mines. Here we are talking about the beginnings of Galamsey. But eventually this will change, and the Gold Coast will also become an exporter of slaves. This trade will keep on and bring in new dimensions. One, when the Portuguese came, they came with a chaplain who was to administer mass to the Portuguese factors in the forts, which later on became castle. The records show that they, at a point, there was nothing, no interest in those mass and others. Trade will go on. But eventually, missionaries will come as part of the trading group. And the significant aspect about this has to do with how eventually, after the 1883 Berlin Conference, where Europeans decided that let's go and sit down and work out a formula so that we don't fight among ourselves in Africa, especially West Africa. So modalities were brought out. The most important one and relevant to our discussion and relevant to what we are today has to be maintaining law and order in whichever area that an European entity found itself. And under that, trade the European missionaries and others move in, move from the coast into the interior. On the coast, some friendships were established, and it led to a situation whereby, if we take Accra, for example, we have the British, the Dutch, and then the Danes. They set up their force within Ga communities, and unfortunately, where they found the Ga people found whichever European group they found among them they became their friends. And that's why British Accra, Jamestown will fight with Dutch Accra. When even the Dutch and the British are fighting in their country, they thought that those have. So that was one arrangement. The other arrangement would be at a time when the British, who were inconsistent with what they wanted to do on the Gold Coast. This was after the 1850s. All other Europeans had left. They were inconsistent. And so at the end of the day, it became an issue of British merchants living on the coast, administering their trading activities, and then making inroads into the traditional areas based on the friendships they have established. And a classic example would be MacLean, who come out and then be able to fashion out what he considered the best way to adjudicate matters, and then made it a kind of an attraction for other indigenous chiefs to apply to regulate. That would create problems. Right. And that would lead to Kinagri, for example, Kinagri of Cape Coast questioning the British. And the British did not see why a native, let me use their language, should do that. He was exiled to Nigeria. Others did it. The other factor had to be the missionaries, where they have moved in. My area, it was very smooth, very smooth, friendly invitation. They were giving restrictions. Don't preach to royals. Don't bring monkeys to the community. Don't ring your bell. But with time, those will be ignored. Then they moved to Achimebwakwa, where they met resistance. And based on the Berlin Conference rules, the British would move in troops, go to Achimebwakwa, defeat the king and his people, put them under bond, pay heavy indemnity, and then by then became more or less British subjects. They would be moving in gradually, and finally would be the celebrated Yasantua conflict, war with the British, which it meant at the end of it all, 1901, the British had gained control over the whole of the Gold Coast. And various enactments and laws were made which eventually took away any semblance of local control of our chiefs and whatever, and ended us up as a colony of the British.
Okay, very, very quickly, Doc, so we bring Prince back into the picture. Yeah. Fast forward, we became the first country sub of the Sahara to gain independence. What led to this, very briefly, and then how did we get into the Fourth Republic? Prince, I'll get back to you soon.
Okay, that's interesting. So many things came up. From before the First World War, or I brought in the issue of Kinagri, other chiefs started complaining about the colonial establishment. Then our entrepreneurial spirit will lead to a number of indigenous people sending their children to first Furabe College, Solevio, and Europe, especially Britain, for studies. Here they will encounter what they believed was the backbone for European conquest of West Africa: technology, development. So they will start talking about the need to make advancements in their various territories towards eventual overthrow of European domination. And this is what we're talking about, the nationalist struggle and others. They'll come back and various activities will come in. They will start organizing talks and others, forming a youth movement, and then making it clear that they were in for a reform. Initially, they were all talking about reforming the colonial establishment But those will change after Second World War, where they will say that we need our independence. Various activities they will then ginger up the demand, and we know what happened with the formation of the UGCC and then eventually the coming of Kwame Nkrumah, and then he taking over as a result of his role as the General Secretary, moving up and down. Disagreements will come between them, which unfortunately, my interpretation is they could not resolve that disagreement. And it's not only the Gold Coast. All sub-Saharan African territories, they all had it. They are out there, they had one mind. Let's go and develop our countries, take away the European yoke. But disagreement came in and they couldn't handle. And that would lead to, in our case, the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah. In the sense that even the journey to independence was fraught with disagreement and tension, and eventually, when we had independence, most leading figures found themselves in detention because they couldn't resolve that disagreement. And that would mark the beginning of an overthrow of our government, an attempt to be made to mend the pieces and then move ahead. Unfortunately, that attempt did not last, and subsequent military takeovers coming in. Talking about it, it wasn't only the local scene that mattered, but the international scene, which we know the biggest of it had to do with the Cold War. US and its allies competing with the Soviet Union and its allies for attention, which unfortunately again saw our leaders playing into it, and that gave rise to the overthrows that we had. In talking about all this, there's one factor that we need to look at: our socio-cultural belief systems and practices. We are people, the best group to point out here is the Ga people. They have a very nice, if you listen to their libation and others, they have a very interesting aspect of their libation, asking the gods to allow, or they say that, Nyahani Ablekuma, Abakumawo, bring in strangers to live with us. The accounts also have those proverbs which says that Yede Ohoho Neyukru, use a stranger to build. So with these philosophies, we were always welcoming people into our folds. And in the case of the Portuguese and eventually all the others that came to the British, that was how we gradually opened up for them to come in, for us to be overwhelmed. Wow. To a point that we needed to.
I wish we had all day to do this. And I saw Prince also paying attention attentively, learning a lot. But again, naturally, so the question is, you're an artist. What have you contributed through your works to the sustenance of our history and the telling of the story from the Ghanaian perspective?
Great. So, like I rightly said from the beginning, that my love for the Ghanaian history started when I was very little. So I had this in mind that when I grow, I would like to be donating annually a painting, like a historical figures, their portraits, into the National Museum to keep their legacy. Okay, so I started this program 2015, where annually I paint legends of the arts and the sciences. The first person that I connected to the museum was the late Efokojo Magbe. So this program is called the Arts Legendary Wall of Fame. That is to honor legends, our heroes, keep their legacy alive. And this program is connected to the National Museum. And last year, 2020, was Professor Kwame Ketia, and then this year is going to be a huge figure who is alive, and we're going to celebrate that at the conference center, God willing. So this is what I'm also doing to also help keep the legacy of our heroes and also place them at the proper place at the museum.
All right, and if you just joined us, this is Moomen tonight. We're having a conversation about Ghana's history. We're asking a very simple question: where are we from? But that's also because a group is putting together what is called the Ghana History Day celebration. The launch will happen, I think, a few days from today. The essence of this year's launch is to set the preamble for subsequent annual celebrations, which will run every year on February 28. The History Day is to join the continuous efforts of acknowledging the sweat and toil of our founding fathers of our dear nation. The idea is also to promote a fun way of learning our history, thereby promoting history in arts. Just a quick one to my producers. We're getting feedback, especially from social media, that the sound is a bit distorted. If you can just work on that quickly so that those watching us on social media can have full benefits from this discussion. Thank you very much. My colleagues there will sort that out in a short while. Now, do you know about this launch coming up? Are you aware that there's a group that says, look, we need to preserve Ghana's history, and so they're launching what is known as the Ghana History Month. You are aware of it?
Yeah, I have heard about it.
Tell me what you know.
Not too detailed, but I've heard about it.
No, are you interested in
yes, for sure.
What role do you wish to play during this month?
Well, as an artist and then a lover of the history, my doors are open. Wherever they feel they can fit me, they should just fix us there. In fact, the artists, we are involved. We also keep the history alive. So if there's a way we can come on, wherever we can, they can fit us.
The group is called DD Global, and they are saying, I just read that the idea is to promote a fun way of learning our history, thereby promoting history in art. And that's why I'm asking you this. Again, my producers have some of your works, which I want us to just show right now, so you can explain to us and to our younger ones who are watching now how that can help to get them to focus a lot more on the importance of history, the preservation of our stories, and not consider every story that is told from the past as common. Social media is really negatively convinced. So we'll play some of those tips we have of Prince right now. So yes, Prince, what are you doing here? These are some of your works.
The one we saw previously. There's another video that I wanted them to play.
All that will come up very shortly.
But these are all art directions, production designs. These are music videos that I worked on as an art director. These are stage events. I normally do Uncle Bova.
And this was during Professor Atamels's funeral. You designed that. Wow. Okay. And we see you here as well. And so this was the painting of Van Damme.
Van Damme, yes, please.
And for those who do not know, Van Damme is one of the very popular Hollywood actors. He used to do this martial arts and so on. And here Prince also was engaged in a movie production. And I'm asking, and I'm projecting this also because I think that one area that we have lacked is to use movies to tell our own. So we watch Ghanaian movies and they're talking about love affairs between a man and a woman and how somebody is a prince. Sometimes the prince doesn't look Ghanaian in any way. So people like you should be able to project. You're doing this in Hollywood for Van Damme and for South Africa and so on. We haven't seen you do that for Ghana, have you?
It's sad because our movie makers or our storytellers mostly don't really want to tell our own stories, and I believe maybe they might say is the budget, but then South Africans have 3 or 4 Mandela films that I have seen. But Ghana don't even have one of Kwame Nkrumah.
Perhaps if we had some producers look into some of the research works done by people like Dr. Yesu and project that we will not be debating over apostrophes in Ghana, whether the apostrophe is after an S or before an S. That is a huge matter here in Ghana. But we see you doing something like the Black Star Square, and this is not in Accra. Where is this?
This is in Kumasi. It was an Independence Day celebration, and in Kumasi they wanted to feel the Independence arc in Kumasi, so I built that in Kumasi Sports Stadium, very huge, on behind the stage, and they performed the whole ceremony right in front of the
and so clearly you have already started doing that. When the History Day or the History Month is launched, what role, apart from the ones that they will be asking you to come and play, if they do, you could also walk up to them and say, this is how I can contribute to the preservation of Ghana's history. What would you do?
I'll do like what I rarely do, mostly like paints legends or paints our heroes to keep their legacy alive. I think that's what I will still want to continue to do.
So, look, I've been reading stuff from DD Global, the organization that hopes to preserve Ghana's history for children in particular. And again, I read this paragraph from them. They say the History Day is to join the continuous effort of acknowledging the sweat and toil of the founders of our dear nation. The idea is also to promote a fun way of learning our history, thereby promoting history in arts. I'll come back to you. Most of the history books are written, first of all, in a language that is not very friendly, especially to children. Sometimes there are too many dates to remember. That does not excite many children, and so naturally it puts children off, and they will go back to their foreign cartoons, which find a way of engaging children for hours, and before long you realize our children are westernized and not Africanized. How are you going to, you as a researcher, ensure that children will begin to enjoy some of your findings?
Okay, thank you. Just before I answer, this Ghana History Day, I think we have to give credit to the Department Department of History Education at Winneba.
Right.
They have been celebrating it, and the focus, they bring in second cycle schools, give them themes. They also ask their students to write proposals. Those proposals are judged the best, are taken, and they mount exhibitions, they act whatever. So it's something that is being done already by the Department of History Education at Winneba. Yes, there are so many things that history is not about dates. People talk about it. I tell my students I never ask questions that demand dates. My simple reason is that I'm a mass phobia. So when I see 1966, what comes to mind is mathematics. So I avoid it. So as a teacher, this is what I've told my students repeatedly, that history is not about dates. The nearest we come to in date is period. 19th century, 18th century, and then we narrate. What are we doing for the students? We did the Institute of African Studies under the leadership of Professor Irene Odote. We did a lot of work regarding the funeral of Otumfuo Osei Opokuwari and the installation of Otumfuo Osei Tutu. And one aspect, in a very simplified way, did a picture book of that great event. And you pick it, the pictures and the simple narrative makes you enjoy it. Besides, even before the book, we mounted an exhibition which was publicized in using all the FM stations in Kumasi to do it, and we created spaces for people including a huge board where the caption was, "I was there." People going to look at pictures taken of them or pictures they posed during that period as part of the exhibition. So in this regard, yeah, we are aware that history is very important. We are doing our best. Unfortunately, we came to a period where history became an appendage, a footnote of our educational system. So that could explain why. At the end of the day, you don't need the issue of Sundiata. How many students today, before going to the university to read history, would have heard of the name? It's not there because of how we did it. So that is the issue. Now we are very much aware that at a point in time, we did a disservice to the nation and our future generation by not making history very important, and then also bringing the language to the barest minimum.
All right.
In one way, some societies don't want to be studied. And I think I give credit to the Asante people. Beside Asante, no other ethnic group in this country opens its doors for you to come and study them. So at the end of the day, it becomes very difficult. We did a research, African Studies did a research on chieftaincy. And we brought in, there's this title, Nana Kwaku the First. And he's alive. You can't have a the first when you are alive.
Oh.
You are Kwaku. And then when you pass, and another person succeeds and takes that name, he becomes the second, and obviously you who use it the first. Now you get a whole lot of our chiefs talking about Nana this the first. And then beats his chest and
Wow.
And how yes, it was a chief. Dr. Kedi Asante pointed it out to us that it is wrong to do that. We talked about the issue of naturalization, a Ghanaian becoming an American. So we brought it in the questionnaire. We went to them and said, no, in Ghanaian society, if you are a Fanti or a Kwapim, and you ended up living in Kumasi, you will never become an Asante. You will be your Fanti or a Kwapim till you die.
Yes.
You will be recognized based on your conduct, your contribution to the growth of that community. So there's no need for you. Of course, if you are an Akan, and then you not go and look for the Betu family, you not go and look for a Betu family head, introduce yourself and you are welcome as a friend, a member of the family, even though you're a Asante. But it will not change your original thing. So these are some of the things that we need to do. And most importantly, this issue, I just spoke about the Winneba one, which I'm very sure most people don't know of. If those groups are coming up, and they are coming with that broadband, very soon we'll catch on with it.
Right.
Let me give you one classic example. We were talking about the arts.
Yes.
Historically, I mean, history as a professional historian, some of the interpretations are not what they were. But still, take Nabru. He's Nabru, the one who Wajashon.
Yes.
Listen to the song. He's talking about Ghana migration and then the linkage of Israel.
Actually, Rexomar.
Yes.
Forgive me. Yes.
He talks about it.
Yes.
Historically, we've not come across the linkage of people coming from Israel. But look at how he has arranged the music. So he plays it. Let's organize a conference of historical society. The member, he plays it and will be dancing. Meanwhile, we think that the entire interpretation is not all that what really happened.
Right.
There is some semblance in Ghana socio-cultural practices that prevailed among Jewish societies. But he has used the art to do it, and people enjoy it. So if he's coming to play, obviously Ghana people around enjoy the rhythm, the beat, and everything. And then what he is saying,
they learn from
it.
Okay, but unfortunately we have run out of time. We have just about 3 minutes more. But I have very many questions from some of our viewers sending me WhatsApp messages, but I'll take just 2 of them because we lack time. One for you and one for Doc as well. Moomen, good evening to you, and many thanks for these inciting programs of late. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to find out from Prince, when I was in school in the late 90s, we used not to respect students who were in the visual arts class. But obviously from what I have heard him say and what you have shown on the screen, he's making a lot of money. Now I feel like when my son is ready, and he will be ready in the next year, he should go and study arts. But asking for me how the prospects look like. Very briefly.
Thank you very much. Art is really now I could say we are living in an art world. Art is ruling the world now. That's why I picked that opportunity, like chance, to move through the schools to let them know, let them be aware of the prospects in those days. We have been limited, and every artist just drawing and painting and doing signboard and t-shirts and all that. But then now artists are working in the film industry, artists are working in the theater space, artists are working in the fashion space and all that. So it's about knowing the prospects or the broader scope of the arts.
Okay.
Yes.
Doc, I'll ask you the last question from our viewers. This one, his name is Kwesi Yeboah. He says, good evening, Moomen and your panelists. I've enjoyed the program thoroughly. You began this program by talking about the importance of history, and you even talked about the fact that it's not everything that has to do with bread and butter. My brother completed the University of Ghana in 2017. He read history. He's still jobless. What are the job prospects, again, and I'm bringing this, for persons who study history, Doc?
Go and ask him, and then obviously just even suggest teaching. He's going to back out. So sometimes when they say you do history and there's no market for you, you need to ask them, have you tried it? And it's not only teaching, you write. There's a lot. There's I think he's still active. He was at the Munshia Palace, taking people around the museum.
Yes.
And he has written a lot of books on Asante. And I think, I don't know whether he has some background as a teacher. So here is someone who has become knowledgeable and has the exposure to every information that he could get, and he puts it into writing. That's so many. And then essentially also history, as you know, because it's a reading subject, it prepares you to other levels. Most of our lawyers have background.
Okay. Yes.
So I think it's a big question.
We're out of time now, really. So the young ones, you can pay attention to history, learn. And let me just tell you a little about the Ghana History Day celebration, which is what the DD Global is organizing. The launch of the Ghana History Day is to adore the concept of History Day celebration among basic and senior high schools in Ghana. This is in collaboration with the Ghana Education Service, the Historical Society of Ghana, and the Tourism Society of Ghana. The essence of this year's launch is to set the preamble for subsequent annual celebrations, which will run every year on February 28th. The History Day is to join the continuous efforts of acknowledging the sweat and toil of our founding fathers. The idea is also to promote a fun way of learning our history, thereby promoting history in arts. With support from the Ghana Education Service and other stakeholders, school children from across the country will participate in a series of historical activities, which will include figure drawing contests, historical exhibit competition, national jigsaw puzzle competition on historical monuments and concepts, historical poetry, dance and drum appellations. All these categories are competitive as competition breeds excellence and brings out hidden talents. The launch of the Ghana History Day celebration will be virtual on the 28th of August, and then you can log on to the website of the organizers, DD Global, which is www.ddglobal.com. Organizers of academic and education events, DD Global, as part of the launch, are also taking advantage of the COVID restraints to also promote digital literacy among teachers who are the focal points of call to the schools. This is a novel idea that's been very welcomed by the heads of schools, history and visual arts departments of various schools. So take note, the launch on the 28th virtual, and you can log on to www.ddee.com and participate in the launch. Thank you so much. This has been an eye-opening conversation. Prince, I wish we had 3 more hours to do this, but unfortunately we ran out of time. Doc, wow, I sat back, and for the first time on this show, I just didn't have any follow-up questions because I didn't want to interfere and interrupt with the education you were giving us. We hope when we invite you, you'll be back here, so we continue from where we left off. We stopped at 1966. Yes. But we are in 2021. A lot has happened in between, Doc. Thank you very much. Please, we have to take this a step further. Thank you so much. And thank you too for being a part of the show. We'll see you again when we bring you another edition. You have a very good night. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
When the voices that matter speak, they speak to GBC. They speak on Moomen tonight.
Now, some of you